Hello, 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 my friends. How is everyone? I understand that this book is coming. Hello, the light just went on. Is coming to you. I'll take my glasses off for right now. It's coming to you at the end of the school year when you have tests and end of school stuff and not good timing, Miss T, for a contest. So I'm considering waiting on the contest for the next book instead of this book. Now, you're going to have to let me know in the comments whether or not you think that's a good idea. Okay? Just in the comments. I'm not going to do a whole poll and all of that. Just in the comments, say yes contest, no contest. Okay? And we will suspend the contest activities for the next book, which I'm still trying to decide will probably be Hatchet because I really need to get it up on the channel. So, with that being said, I am reading tonight Philip Hall Likes Me, I reckon, maybe. It is a Newbery honor book. It also, now I need to put my glasses back on because I was reading the back of this and oh my goodness. Okay, so it is a Newbery honor book. It is an American Library Association notable book, and it is a New York Times outstanding book of the year for the years 1974 and 1975. Okay, that's when this book came out. Good choice, you guys. I don't know if you can see it. Good choice. It's an excellent book. Okay, so here we go. We are on chapter 2, the case. And I forgot to bring my turkey. The case of the missing turkeys. And this is the month of December. Okay, I'm moving over into the light a little bit so I can see with my old eyes. So here we go. You remember last time he was not very nice to her. Did not invite her to his birthday party. That was very rude. So let's see what happens now, because she's got his number. Miss Johnson was telling the class that never in the whole history of school teaching had there ever been such a perfectly wonderful number one best student as me. Philip Hall rushed in to congratulate me. I likes you even better now than I did when you were only number 2. So much happiness rushed to my heart that it had to expand a mite near twice its usual size just to take it all in. Then, bang, bang, bang! My eyes snapped open at the early morning noise outside my bedroom window, while at the same moment, Miss Johnson, Philip Hall, and my beautiful dream, dissolved like a raindrop into a freshly plowed field. Minutes later, I carried my breakfast a cup of sweet milk and a slab of hang on just a second, and a slab of cornbread to where Pa was hammering one of the steel fence poles deeper into the ground. Even though December had been around for better than a week, Pa was sweating under the Arkansas sun. His face looked as polished as black shoes on Sunday morning. He didn't answer to "Morning, Pa," only muttered that he didn't know how it was happening, but he didn't intend for it to continue. I said, "None of your turkeys disappeared during the night." But when Paul still didn't answer, I made a question out of it. "Did any of your turkeys disappear during the night?" He wiped his forehead with a red bandana. "Another 10, maybe more." "Oh, Pa," I said, taking on some of the burden. "We were so sure that all those strips of cloths flapping from the fence would scare off the chicken hawks." "Ain't no hawk with the sense God gave him going to mess around with no 20-pound turkey." I had another idea. "If a hawk won't, a fox will, and we got plenty of red foxes lying around these parts." His forehead furrowed. "That fox would have to crawl under this fence, which is pretty dang smart, seeing as there ain't no crawl through space." "Maybe he went over," I suggested. "Over 6 feet high fencing? Not unless them red foxes is taking flying lessons." When I mentioned that there are other ways to get inside a turkey yard, such as climbing over the fence, Pa nodded, threw open the gate, and told me to go inside the yard, get down on all fours, and pretend to be a hungry red fox. With my height cut in half, the fence looked twice as high, but never mind that. How can I, the fox, get back over the fence with 6 or more of Farmer Lambert's plumpest turkeys? Pa watched carefully as I carefully thought. Finally, I gave up. A fox couldn't get back over that fence with turkeys, so he'd have to do what the folks in restaurants do: eat their turkey dinner on the premises. "Spoken like a true fox," said Pa, "which prove it wasn't no fox, 'cause ain't no blood nor bones, no turkey's remains of any kind in this here yard." The next thing I thought of was a groundhog who runnels his way inside the fencing and then drags off the turkeys through miles and miles of winding underground passageways. "It makes about as much sense as any other explanation," said Pa, as we walked across every foot of the turkey yard in search of the mouth to the passageway. I found the blue button missing from my winter coat, and Pa found Luther's 19-cent mechanical pencil, but nobody found no tunnel opening. He leaned back against the rain shelter and sighed. "Don't make no more sense suspecting a groundhog than it do suspecting the Easter bunny." I sighed back when suddenly an idea struck with such force that I knew that the mystery wasn't going to be a mystery no more. Pointing toward the turkey compound, I said, "An airplane." Pa looked. "Where?" "Nowhere there. I'm saying an airplane is making our birds disappear." "An airplane," he repeated, laughing first a little and then harder every time I told him to quit his laughing and let me explain he'd only laugh harder. I gave him a little poke to the ribs. "Now you listen to me, Pa. I might know something that can save our turkeys." And when I said that, Pa seemed to lose his laughter. Then speak on, Beth girl. Speak on. Well, pretend this plane has left New York City and is flying west. The pilot has to take his plane up high to get over our Ozark Mountains. But once over the mountains, the plane swoops back down low, right over this farm, right over this turkey yard. So, said Pa, you think I was thinking, I said, interrupting, that some mighty low-flying airplanes is scaring our poultry into taking to the air. I watched Pa's lips shape themselves into a near-perfect O. Scared enough turkeys could have flown over that fence. Sure could. And come to roost in some nearby trees. We searched the branches of every tree from here to the highway. I found a bee's nest in one, and Pa found one of Ma's missing face cloths in another. But neither of us found a single turkey resting on a single limb. Should have known better than blaming some airplane, said Pa, rubbing the back of his neck. Because even if planes had scared them into some nighttime tree roosting, by morning feeding time, they'd be knocking the compound's fence down trying to get back in. When we came in to eat, Ma was already putting chicken salad, always made with turkey and eyes. Chicken salad, sliced tomatoes, cornbread, and tall glasses of cold, fresh buttermilk on the table. She took one look at Pa and reminded him that he ain't the first farmer to spoil a crop or lose a bird. So wash up and eat up, she said, because we're going into town for some trading and socializing. On Pocahontas's main street, Pa Angle parked directly in front of Calvin's meat market, where Calvin Cook, his fat son Calvin Jr., Miss Eleanor Linwood, and Chef Nathan Miller weren't, truth to tell, arguing so much as they were engaged in spirited conversation. The sheriff shook his head as though he was trying to shake off the nonsense. I ain't for a moment doubting that you saw something, Miss Linwood. I'm only doubting that what you saw was the monster of the mountain. Miss Linwood's eyes seemed to be lit from the inside. He was half again as tall as any man, 8, maybe 9 feet tall. I never saw his face, but I saw his hands, and they were big enough for carrying all manner of things. Ma pushed me on. Listening in on other folks' conversation ain't considered proper. Didn't I learn you that? But proper or not, everybody all up and down Main Street seemed to be talking about nothing but Miss Linwood's sighting of the monster of the mountain. Over the years, very few people have claimed seeing him, but there wasn't hardly nobody that didn't have a favorite monster of the mountain story to tell. Our minister, the Reverend Ross, was remembering the night way back in 1938 when the Ringling Brothers and Farnham and Bailey circus train derailed 5 miles west of Pocahontas. State police from 3 states searched the Ozarks for miles around without letting any of us home folks know what it was they were searching for. Reckon that's where the monster of the mountain came from? I said. He pulled a flat toothpick from his black suit and stuck it between his front teeth. Don't you know that for Bible preaching, sure? But I do know this gorilla man was a circus's feature attraction before the derailment. But afterwards, he was never exhibited again. When we got back to the farm, Ma and Ann went right into the house saying they was too tired to do anything but fall into bed while Luther did exactly what he always does when he hasn't seen his precious pigs in a few hours. Got to go ask them if they miss me, Luther said with his grin. Lots of times I've asked my brother whether the short of goodness believes that pigs could miss any human person, and he always answers, sure, while holding on to his little grin. And then I'd say, now, Luther, you tell me the God's honest truth. Do you really, really believe that? I, Tonight, when I asked him, Luther pointed a finger at me, which suddenly made me look a lot older than 14. Oh, made him look a lot older than 14. When you was old enough to know, Miss Beth, baby, I'm going to tell you. I'm old enough to know right now, I said, suddenly hearing the sounds of smart aleck in my voice. As he walked toward the pig pen, he called over his shoulder, when you is really old enough to know, you already will. The night was cold and morning a long time coming. Once during my sleep, I woke, thinking I heard the untamed cry of Gorilla Man. At the breakfast table, Pa, already Sunday dressed in his good suit and polka dot tie, sat smiling like he was real pleased with himself as he dropped spoons of sugar on top of a huge steaming bowl of oatmeal. As I sat down, he was too busy explaining how he outwitted the low-down turkey thief with a few well-placed kerosene lanterns to take any notice. My notice, though, and right away, went to the pot to ladle me out a bowl before she turned to look at Pa. Eugene Lambert, you haven't been out to check on your flock yet, and you, all of all folks, ought to know better, counting your turkeys before they's counted. Even the devil don't go messing around no places like, said Pa, already beginning to back out the kitchen door. Just as I began thinking that at last Pa had put a stop to the disappearance, he came back through the door, looking as strange as he would if a dozen men from a far-off planet came floating through our kitchen to ask directions. Eugene, shouted Ma, rushing to his side, are you ailing? He shook his head with such force that I was sure he was only trying to shake off his troubles. Another 6, maybe more, missing. Ma clasped her hands. Lord, don't tell me. How's a man supposed to earn a living? Asked Pa, making the sound more like a complaint than a question. Because a chicken hawk, red fox, groundhog, airplane, or whatever the critter calls himself ain't one bit fooled by me. So what's a man to do? As soon as we came home from church, Pa took out his letter paper and wrote to the answer man at his favorite magazine, Turkey World. As he licked the envelope closed, he spoke directly to me. I gave them folks at the magazine all the facts I know. Reckon they can figure out what's happening. Sure, Pa. Ever know the answer man not to have the answers? Never, said Pa, perking up. I don't remember there ever being a question that the answer man couldn't answer. Not in all the 15 years I've had that prescription. Subscription, I corrected. Prescription is what Doc Brenner gives you when you're ailing. He stood up to give me little pity pats to the top of my head. Ooh-wee, ain't I got me some smart girl? Is you sure that hall boy is the number one best student? But by the time I answered no, sir, that I wasn't sure, not completely, Pa had already turned his attention to Ma, saying, I'm going to spend this night guarding a turkey range. Only thing I know to do until the answer man tells me better. At daybreak, I awoke when Pa came into the house mumbling, Safe tonight. I keep them safe tonight. Then he dropped to his bed so hard that I heard the bed spring strike the floor. And it was then that I heard my mother's voice saying, That's the last time you going to do that, Mr. Eugene Lambert. But the closest Pa came to answering was a steady The next day at recess, I got Philip Hall aside, begged him to help me this very night to solve the mystery of the missing turkeys. He shook his head, saying, We'll have to put it off for a spell. Some things ain't safe to do so soon after the monster of the mountain has been seen about. When I told him that I didn't think that tiger hunters were supposed to be afraid of monsters, Philip seemed to remember that that was true. Then he even reminded me that he himself wasn't afraid, not a bit. I waited until our house darkened and filled with sleep sounds before getting out of bed. Outside, the air felt as though it had been refrigerated, and an orange ball of a moon looked just about perfect for throwing illumination on Barnum and Bailey's long lost gorilla man. That thought made me want to rush back into the house, but other thoughts kept me from doing it. Thoughts about what would happen to all us Lamberts, if Pa's turkey went on disappearing. Thoughts about brave Philip waiting for me down by the turkey compound. And there was still one more thought, and this was the cheeriest of all. Sheriff Miller saying right out loud that the only place the monster of the mountain lived was in some folks' imagination. But just to be on the safe side, I crossed everything it was possible to cross as I tiptoed deeper into the darkness toward the Poultry Range gates. When I reached the thick trunk tree, Philip wasn't waiting there. I told myself not to fret as I climbed up the tree. He'll be along directly. Didn't he promise me, not once, but twice, that he'd sneak out just as soon as everybody in his house was asleep? As I began to find comfort in believing that sweet Philip was right now on his way over, it happened. God switched off his nightlight, and the whole earth was plunged from moonlight to no light. Fear struck against the inside of my chest like a fighter's fist. I held my hand over my heart as I looked to the sky, only a black rain cloud passing before the moon. When the moonlight returned, I felt better. You is some baby, Beth Lambert, I told myself. Then, from over Philip's way, a light. It was a flashlight poking bright sparks into the darkness. I was at a far enough distance from the house to give out one of my tongue curled behind my front teeth whistle. I used to be able to do it, can't do it now. He heard because right away he flashed the light onto his face and body. Philip was wearing the complete Boy Scout uniform, even down to the sash that crossed his chest and served as a showplace, as well as a sticking place for all 6 of his merit badges. When he reached my tree, he handed up his flashlight and his battered BB gun for me to hold until he seated himself into the Y-shaped branch opposite mine. Your pa's turkeys are going to sleep tight tonight, he said, patting the barrel of his gun, 'cause I'm a gonna shoot anything that moves. After a while, the snug branches that cradled me began to feel more like a branch than a cradle. Philip didn't seem to mind the hardness, though. Maybe it was because he was all the time complaining another complaint. He was real cold. I didn't blame him much. The wind was whipping through the ice-glazed branches. But wouldn't you think the silly scout would have known enough to wear a coat? Suddenly, a wild, oh, shattered and splattered the quiet. Oh! Philip grabbed my arm. Gorilla man. No, only a lovesick coyote, I told him, wondering if there ever would come a time when he'd hold on to my arm without being frightened into it. I guess I know that, he said, releasing my arm. Then he warned me that I was going to have to stay calm and collected. I'll try. Good, he said, because I can shoot any chicken hawk or fox that gets behind that fence. I asked. That the same gun that couldn't knock over a tin can? It did too. Yeah, but not until you were close. You're so close your breath could have done it. Philip began telling me that I didn't know nothing at all. But he stopped fussing the moment I touched his arm and pointed to a moving vehicle that had just turned off the main highway onto the dirt road dividing the Lambert pig and poultry farm from the Hall dairy farm. And since the only place the old rutted road could take a person is to our farm or Philip's, I asked him if his folks were expecting visitors. Our house has been sleeping for quite a spell, he answered, turning to look at our lightless house. Yours too? I nodded yes, wondering if knots can be seen by moonlight. The vehicle, which began to look more and more like a truck, cut its lights while continuing to move through the darkness. Why, Philip asked as he began squeezing the blood from my hand. Why, why did, why did, why did they do that? I said, flinging in the question for him before answering it. I don't know. The panel truck circled our tree before coming to a stop at the turkey's yard gate. Both doors opened and two people, both men, got out and without a single word lifted the latch and entered the compound. Then from Philip's mouth came little pops of breath. Shh. I threw my hand across his mouth. Hush, I said into his ear. I'm going to be needing your help, you hear? When I felt his face bob up and down, I let go of his mouth. Sneak on into our house. Wait, Pa and Luther, while I see if I can recognize those thieves. Philip handed me his gun while he shimmied down the tree's backside. I watched the men with their long white cotton pickers' sacks move on toward the roosting turkeys. Through the moonlight, I strained my eyes trying to see just who they were. I couldn't. But I did hear me a heap of flapping and gobbling going on. Under my breath, I said, Come on, Pa. Oh, please. But what if they take off with 2 bags full of turkeys before Pa and Luther get here? Then we'd never know who's to blame unless a license plate. Still holding on to Philip's gun, I climbed down the tree and edged around to the rear of the panel truck. I couldn't see the number, so I brailled it. 7, 9, 4. 2, 6, 5. Just as I began congratulating myself on the fact that I now had those crooks' license number, I discovered that I couldn't remember it, expecting that it started with a 5. Or was it a 6? I looked back over to our house, which was as black as coal stove's innards. Oh, Pa, I said, making it sound more like a prayer than a request. Where are you when I need you? Then I saw them pulling their now filled canvas bags toward the gate. Like a chant, I kept saying the word, Pa, Pa, Pa. But our house slept on, dark, dark as ever. As a hand clicked the gate's latch, I shouted, Stay where you is, while my own hand kept groping for the trigger. Where is that trigger? What? Shouted a duet of voices. Finally, I found it. I said, Stay where you are before I shoot you full of lead. Pop, don't let me be shot, screamed one man, who turned out to be an overgrown boy. Shut your mouth, Calvin Jr. So that's who it is. The Calvin Cooks, Junior and Senior. Well, well, said the butcher, trying for a light note. Why don't you put that hunting rifle down before you go hurting yourself? In the moonlight, he had mistaken the BB gun for a rifle. Look, we're sorry we bothered you. He touched the latch. Well, we'll be leaving now. I used my meanest voice. First one touches that gate is the first one going to get shot. Then, in the distance, a door slammed, and heavy feet began running my way, snapping branches and breaking twigs. Pa! I called into the night. Here! Over here! Within moments, he came to my side with a sudden sliding stop. His powerful hunting rifle was aimed directly at Calvin Cook Sr. as he asked me, You all right? My strength felt as though it had all been used up. Still, I was able to manage. I'm okay. When Luther, Ma, and Philip Paul came running up, Paul moved his rifle up and down at the cook, saying, Well, would you look what strange looking birds Beth found in our turkey yard? It's the cooks from the meat market, I said as Philip flashed his flashlight on them. Neither one of them cooks seemed to appreciate the spotlight. Mr. Cook moved his hands into let's be friends gesture. Now, there's no harm done, so you just better let us go now. Don't you go talking about no harm, answered Paul. You've been taking our hard-earned living away from us. What do you know or care about the harm you caused? One of the turkeys found its way out of a long canvas bag and with a good loud squawk ran off in the direction of the rain shelter. Mr. Cook forced a smile as he pulled out a thick wad of money and slid off one of the bills before handing it out toward Pa. All right, I don't blame you a bit for wanting something. So here's $5 for your trouble. Pa took the money. Reckon this ought to pay me for one of my turkeys, but them's 49 others needing to be paid for. What? Shouted the butcher. Your turkeys aren't worth $5 apiece. Why, I never sold a single one of them for more than $4, and maybe $4.50 apiece. Mister, I reckon you better peel off another 49 of those $5 bills. Mr. Cook pointed his finger at Pa. Wow, that's highway robbery. Pa nodded his head in agreement. That's just what we is talking about. You coming off of that highway to rob me. Luther drive the truck over to Sheriff Miller's house. Tell him to get right over here and arrest these low-down critters. Wait up now, wait up, said the butcher, whose hands gave up their pointing to return to a more friendly motion. That being the motion of peeling off $5 bills and handing them over to Paul. When the 49th bill was counted, Mr. Cook reached for the latch. Stay put, said Paul, jiggling his rifle before running to Luther. Didn't I tell you to get to the sheriff? Didn't I tell you that? Almost at the moment that Luther said, but I thought, Mr. Cook screamed, what? From down the highway came a speeding car with a flashing dome light and the low, long wail of a siren. A minute later, Sheriff Nathan Miller snapped the steel handcuffs around the wrists of the Cooks. Farvers, hereabout, been complaining about missing livestock ever since you Cooks moved into town. Calvin Jr.'s lower lip pouted forward as he spoke directly to me. This is all your fault. My dad is a respectable businessman. Respect don't keep company with greed, Calvin Jr. went on. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, a girl carrying a dangerous rifle. And that's twice you is wrong, I said, holding up the BB gun so he could get a better look. Don't reckon I could tell you which would be more painful, getting shot by this BB gun or running ahead on into a mosquito. It was then that the rest of the turkeys found their way out of the cook's canvas bags and with squawks of victory ran off through the darkness. And that's chapter 2 of Philip Hall Likes Me, I Reckon Maybe. The Case of the Missing Turkeys. Seems like Beth's got a lot going on up here. She's a pretty smart cookie. Okay. So, chapter 3, the title of chapter 3 is I Never Asked for No Allergy. Have no idea what that's about. Okay, until next time. I will say this before I give you the blessing. Comment down below. Contest, no contest. That's all I need. One word, 2 words. All right? So until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his peace.